I have 6 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has the roll call been taken?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Consent calendar before us, we have the city commission meeting minutes from June 10th, the Parks Advisory Board minutes, monthly finance report, police monthly report, and Spruce of Warrenton events budget, which has been resubmitted in the packet. Has everyone had a chance to see the resubmitted budget in the draft box? Yeah, most. Okay. Is there any amendments or changes to the agenda or consent calendar?
To the agenda.
To the agenda, Commissioner Salacio?
I would like to add consideration of the Lease to Locals pilot program to the agenda.
Okay. Is there any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. That'll be item 7F on business items.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I also add an
Sure.
agenda item, resolution 2707 regarding budget 24-25 intra-fund transfer?
Okay, the sanitation budget amendment on resolution number 2707. That will be item 7G if there's no objection. Hearing none, so ordered. With the agenda amendments and consent calendars presented, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Poe Dyer to approve the consent calendar and agenda amendments as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion carries. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Poe.
Nothing for me tonight.
Commissioner Salacio.
Dates.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I got a couple.
Sure.
Lieutenant Colpack last week, and it's very interesting. I think that the biggest issue, of course, that we talked about, I see Kevin's here today, was the issue dealing with having a conversation specifically about Tongue Point. Then this goes to, of course, a second meeting I attended, which was on Friday with Congresswoman Bonaducci, and she actually went there to Tongue Point, and they wouldn't let her in. They refused her entrance. And, you know, it's again, I thought that was interesting. I mean, here we have a member of Congress who shows up and says, I'd like to at least to see what's going on. And they wouldn't let her into the facility. I am concerned that there's a lack of urgency. I know that there's a lot of people who are been meeting and doing things, but from the standpoint of the federal government, more people need to let these people in and sort of figure out what's going on, because there's going to be a lot of people. I met with someone who's a member of the community in Hammond yesterday. She has until the end of the month to find out whether or not her job still exists. She doesn't know, you know, what she's going to do, if there'll be a job, if there won't be a job. There's 100 students who still have not been returned to the school, don't know if they're supposed to, if they could come back, should they come back. Others are waiting to find out if they're going to have a place to even live if they come back here, or if the place gets closed, what are they going to do? And you know, it needs to be something more of an urgency, I think. Than, of course, this is in our city, and it's not affecting us per se in the city of Warrenton, although it is. And I said this during the Colpack meeting, which is, do you know how much time and effort the students donate to the cities or to nonprofits in this community that don't get the time of day from other groups that would not be able to do some of the things they do, from building flower pots in the city to helping. They had already agreed to help take the Legion, the old City Hall library in Hammond, and help bring that back to life so that VFW could go back in there. I think it's a sad thing, regardless of where you sit politically. That, I mean, to see something like this happen in a community like ours, which for over, 60 something years, this organization has been in this community, and I think it's very, very sad to see that continue in a community like this. And then the one other thing, and I also attended last week a meeting with Spruce Up. Spruce Up's going through some growing pains, a lack of membership, but I think they're looking, and I commend them for this, looking for a new opportunity to sort of figure out who they are as an organization. They've made a very conscious decision this year to really focus on the things that they're committed to having to do this year, not moving on to bigger and larger things. They have taken on a few things that will hopefully help them as an organization grow a little bit, but also I think that they know that they can't keep biting off as much as they've been biting off, and continuing to think that the organization with 5 members can continue to thrive that way. I encourage them, and I encourage anyone who is interested in that organization to really get together and be part of it. And I appreciate the people who attend the meetings. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. City Manager,
I have nothing.
City Recorder. I'll just add, I met with the Warrenton Parks Alliance, and Commissioner Saucy was there as well. And Meyer Freeman about the Quincy Robinson project to redo the pickleball / tennis / basketball courts in Quincy Robinson Park. It was a good meeting. I believe Public Works is getting in touch with the relevant parties. I believe there has been already contact between Parks Alliance and Public Works related to pickleball surfacing. So I felt like that was a good meeting that will hopefully yield some additional resources out of the Parks Alliance, something that they can sink their teeth into as well. Also, I've been staying in touch with different legislators related to our budget request for the sewer treatment plant. And I'll just say that right now, the transportation budget is in such disarray that that is sucking probably the majority of everybody's time, both in terms of being sucked into committees, but also just the politics of everything that's going on with that. And I'm sure if you follow the news, you can kind of get a gist of what's going on there. Currently, there is not yet a budget request for ours that's been put forward in any amendments. I'm trying to see if we can get a legislator to put a budget amendment in for us. Whether or not we're successful, we'll find out. I know there's a big push from the governor's office to make everything programmatic instead of through individual programmatic requests in the budget. We kind of knew that going in, but we're going to still push that. And then also, I don't have an update other than we'll have more information on the FEMA buyout sometime probably end of July or August. So just wanted to update everybody on that. Commissioner Celestio, anything you wanted to add on the meeting that we had with Parks Alliance?
No, that covers it. I think having additional lighting and benches and providing variety of opportunities for recreation can really enhance that utilization of the park. So I appreciate Public Works collaboration on this, and I'm really excited to have something nice just down the street.
Awesome. All right. We'll move on to public comment. Mr. Tony Folletti.
I have a couple things I'd like to address tonight. The first is, has the state of Oregon, are they going to reimburse us for losing room tax for having half of Fort Stevens closed?
No.
Well, maybe we can get them to give us some more money for the sewer plant then, if they're going to not give us our room tax money. The second thing is, a couple weeks ago, the community recycling center over here, the cardboard was such a mess. I thought we had a camera there. Is that true? Do we have a camera there? Because it was really, the cardboard was all over it. Like, people have been using it too much. So if we could maybe see who did that, maybe tell them, kind of educate them a little bit about, if the bin's full, don't put it in there. And the third thing is, I am in support of, the fee that you proposed tonight for the shopping carts. I think we need to do something about that. It does seem to be getting out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you. City Recorders, any Zoom comment requests? Hearing none, we'll close public comment. Thank you, Mr. Folletti. We'll move on to public hearings, which we have none. So we'll go on to business items for the Clatsop County deflection program. Feel free to come up.
Good evening. My name is Christina Schultz, and I am the Deflection Program Coordinator, and I am accompanied by.
Hi, my name is Trista Erickson. I'm the Recovery Services Program Assistant Manager at Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare.
Yeah, and my name's Isaiah O'Neill. I work at Classic Behavioral Health also. I'm the drug and alcohol counselor that works directly with deflection referrals.
All right.
So we're here just to kind of give you an update of where deflection is in Clatsop County. And so deflection was started obviously September 1st, 2024. And this is to counteract the House Bill 110. And so in order for us to make drugs illegal again, we had to incorporate a deflection program to offer folks that have substance abuse problems opportunity to seek treatment versus getting criminal charges against them. So kind of just a brief overview, like what is deflection? Deflection is a powerful collaborative effort uniting Clatsop County Sheriff's Office with the District Attorney's Office and all the local agencies and CBH. So this program offers individuals struggling with subject addiction. And like I said, it will help them go into getting treatment versus getting the criminal justice system. So what you see before you is we're going to go through some of the quick stats that we have. And again, like I said, this is 8 months worth of stats. So you've got referring agencies, which is every agency in Clatsop County. If we can go to the next page. If it will. So this is a breakdown of referrals per month. So you can kind of see we started off a little bit slow, but now that in February, we expanded our program a little bit more to allow more folks into the program, allowing folks that do, because originally it was just substance in possession of a controlled substance only. But now we have opened it up to folks that are on supervision, but also can have small minor crimes attached with it also. So since we did that in February, you can see our numbers have jumped up quite significantly, up to 8 in March and 6 for March and April. If we go on to the next slide. So this is going to be breaking it down referral agency and clients entered into the program. So you can kind of see in the beginning, Clatsop County has referred 6 clients to the program. OSP has referred 1. Seaside PD has referred 3. Warrenton PD has 1. DA's office and between myself, we've done 7. So if I'm on the end of looking for other ways that we can get folks into the program, so I'll reach out to the DA's office and say, hey, what about this client? Could we offer the deflection program? And they give me the final say that yes, we can go ahead and do that. Next slide. So offered deflection by agency, but declined. So again, Astoria has offered 3 people and they declined Clatsop County 1 and Seaside PD 2. Next slide. So referred by agency and client accepted, but they didn't show. So Astoria did 1, Clatsop is 1, and Seaside PD did 3. Next. So it should be breaking it down. I don't know why it's not breaking it down, but this is breaking down the drug types. So in the pink is meth, and that is right now 52% of the problem of the folks that are in the program that they're using methamphetamine, and the 36%, which is the next blue, is at 36% for fentanyl. And then there's a little bit of breakdown of cocaine. What else do we have? MDMA, and crack and cocaine. Those are the other 2. So next is we're going to go over the age demographics. I thought this was interesting to just kind of capture the picture of, so we've had 4 folks enter the program that are 50 and over. 10 are between the ages of 30 and 49. And then we've got 4 that are between the ages of 18 and 29. So kind of a different breakdown. And then on the next one, age of demographics of the clients that declined the program. So again, folks 30 to 49, there was 4 of them that declined, and between the ages of 18 to 29, there was only 2. Next. So this is interesting to see the residents at the time of contact. So when Isaiah does his initial assessment with our clients, we're kind of getting all kinds of information. Because when I am doing all the statistical data to CJC, it is about 22 to 28 pages worth of statistical data that I need to take from each client that we're getting. So Isaiah is the one that is maintaining these.
Say that again. How many pages per client?
Between 22 to 28 pages of statistical data that we're having to obtain to enter into. So we're really I describe them as an onion. We are peeling back the layers to get all the information that we need. So Isaiah is the first hand with interacting with the client and getting all this information, and then relays it to me, and then I enter it into the statistical data. So residents at the time of contact, one person was living in their vehicle, two were living in a tent outside, three of them were unsheltered. We had one living in a homeless shelter. We've got 9 folks that are living with friends or family, couch surfing, and then 2 actually own their own residence. Next. So this is, I think the last is deflection stats. So for, like I said, for the 18 months, we have had 18 folks enter into our program. And we had a number of clients who failed our deflection program at this point is 5. And right now we've had 4 folks graduate, and technically we have another client graduating actually probably on the 7th of July. So that'll be up to 5. Number of deflection citations issued by the law enforcement agency is 12. Number of eligible deflection clients was 29. So again, we've had some that have been offered the deflection program, but they've declined. So they chose to take the criminal charge instead of getting help and treatment. And then number of warm handoffs with CBH, and that's where they're out with law enforcement, and law enforcement calls CBH to respond to the scene to do the warm handoff, to release the law enforcement back to taking calls, and then CBH takes over the handoff there. And that's 16. And then the last one is number of clients agreed to the deflection program but never showed up is 5. So again, we offer it to them, we sit down and talk with them, and then they fail to show up and things like that. And then the next slide is the last, and this kind of really talks, and I mean, Isaiah really can talk about this if you want. The deflection stats on a number of UAs, individual sessions, group therapy, detox, inpatient treatment, and medication urges and cravings. You want to talk about that? If you want to.
Yeah, so my name's Isaiah again, and I'm the drug and alcohol counselor that works directly with the clients. Part of their treatment program, when they come to us, we offer residential, we offer detox, we offer medication for opiate and stimulant use. The bare minimum requirement for them to successfully complete would be doing 2 outpatient groups a week, random UAs once a week. They have to meet with me every week, and they have to complete 12 weeks. So sometimes somebody will come in, have a rough start, miss a week or 2, and that gets added on to the end. So the 12 weeks of participation. And those stats are a little old, like as of right now, I think she said 18 had entered, but I looked today and there's 27 people that entered, and we got about 17 or 18 active right now.
Remind me that pie chart of those numbers are what again?
Oh, so looking at this, the 150, that's how many UAs we've collected through the clients over the months.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
As a whole, right?
For the 18 clients that have been in the.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, these stats are a couple months old, but individual sessions, 85. So I meet with everybody every week. Group therapy, detox, 5, like that number has definitely gone up. The amount of people who have chosen to participate in inpatient residential treatment has gone up. We have a couple guys that are there right now that have been there for a couple months, and they're doing really well. So overall, I think it's a positive.
Any questions for the?
I had a question.
Commissioner?
I noticed there wasn't, in the pie chart, wasn't anything with alcohol, just because no one's been referred because of alcohol.
So yeah, it's possession of narcotics, basically. So alcohol, we do have outpatient treatment for people with alcohol, and CBH does run the DUI program for people struggling with alcohol.
Because one of our worst problems is alcohol.
Yeah, I know. And it is one of the most dangerous drugs.
So I have a question for the inpatient. They don't do that here in Clatsop County. They have to go somewhere else, don't they?
Yeah, but we got pretty good connections. I can get somebody in a residential treatment within a week or 2 now. Like a year ago, it was like 4 to 6 month wait, but now I think we've greased the wheels.
You know where the closest one is?
I got pretty good connections in Portland.
So they do have inpatient?
Yeah, and it's way more accessible than it was a year ago. Some of my supervisors, I think they greased the wheels somewhere, and we got front of the line at certain places. So Yeah,
Yeah.
our referrals go to the top of the list.
I just wondered because it's a very small portion and then I know
Yeah.
there's nothing locally. If you try to get
Yeah.
someone into inpatient, it's.
No, luckily, Virtue in Astoria is accepting people for detox now locally, whereas they hadn't in the past. So that's really easy because it's 3 blocks from.
So even though they made drugs legal, they didn't have anywhere for anybody to go.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. First off, so the people who don't go, you say they have given the opportunity and they choose not to. Do they go to jail? Do they?
So what happens is then I immediately respond back to the DA's office and said, hey, we offered the client deflection and they chose not to. Here's the case number, here's their information. And then I get a hold of the local agency and I say, hey, go ahead and send the report. Because immediately once we offer deflection, the agencies are to put the police reports on hold because we're going to hold the charges in abeyance. And then if they fail to go or fail to show up, or if they just fail, then I contact the DA's office and let them know. And then we submit the.
And
police
then
report.
those agencies decide where they want to go with it next.
Yeah, but most of them, they immediately send the reports to the DA's office and then they're charging the criminal charges.
And then the amount of recidivism of people who graduate, what's that number?
Right now, so we've had 4 people complete, and I got 1 guy who his recovery journeys like this. 3 I know of that we haven't had any further police contact, and they've just completed. And as far as I know, they're doing well.
Yeah.
But the other guy who, like I said, his recovery's going like this. He texts me. He still goes to AA meetings and stuff like that. But I think the main thing he's struggling with right now is marijuana. He said so. He got off fentanyl, got off the net, and he's just kind of struggling with marijuana.
And then one follow-up question, and I forgive me, but just so I know, what's the average cost for this program per person?
I don't know.
So, what we have budgeted for each client is $500 per client. And
Get
so
through this whole program?
through the whole, well,
I think he's.
How does
asking
treatment get
like
paid for if it's only 500?
money you didn't get?
oh, clinical costs.
Total cost per patient?
Yeah, because I did not bring my budget with me. I'm sorry, but I can get that information to you. Absolutely. And I can send it to whoever send it to you. I will send that and get that to you.
Thank you.
I know in May, the chief provided some stats related to overdoses in Warrenton. There was 10 suspected, 3 fatal, and 5 where naloxone was administered. Thinking about like the downstream effects of this program, do you have any stats related to frequency of overdoses over time, or is it too short right now?
Do you have that?
I mean, I have opinions and some comments about that. We don't have that because we don't track it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, if the person refuses, if the reversal is successful and then they refuse further treatment, we're not even.
So there's a gap there.
There's a huge gap between first responders responding to these things and follow up with the community mental health provider who has access to all these medications. So we have something called a clearinghouse.
Could you come up to the mic so the people on Zoom can hear you?
We have something called a clearinghouse grant, which we just maxed out for the remainder of this fiscal year. So we've I'd say over the last 4 years, we have had at least $80,000 worth of naloxone that has been delivered to Clatsop County and we have handed out, and we are on our last 200 boxes. And what I can tell you is that the overdoses are happening so frequently in all different parts of our county that our, for lack of better words and lack of non-stigmatizing words that are evading my brain right now, the people in active addiction are so used to it, they are saving each other and they are not even calling first responders anymore. So there is no way to tell. The only way we can tell is we'll drop off 15 boxes of naloxone and then we'll come back a week later and they say, we used all of those in the first 3 days.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. What is blocked?
Naloxone, Narcan.
Yeah, no.
Narcan.
Yeah, sorry. Narcan's the brand name. We don't get brand name because brand name's really expensive, but naloxone is yeah.
What's the cost per dose on that you county's paying on?
So
Naloxone?
the county doesn't pay for any of that. That is
CBH.
because coming from it's an OHA co-imagine grant. But the cost the cost of the grant to get the medication is $24 a box. We get it much cheaper directly from the manufacturers as opposed to going to Safeway and purchasing a box at however much those are. I don't even know
Yeah.
anymore.
I guess my question is, well, I think to what Commissioner Slausio might have been getting at, which was we had these calls, but that isn't really relative to this program because your program only is if there's criminal charges for possession. Because I mean, if you have an overdose, that's not necessarily, I mean, it's prima facie possession, but it's not actual possession, so to speak, right?
Well, okay, so in February, we did expand our pathways. So we have one pathway, one that they have to have a criminal charge. And then pathway 2 is if we know somebody that has a substance abuse problem, they haven't got a criminal charge at this yet, we can offer them deflection and get them to go in. Now, do we have anything holding over their head? No, we don't have a criminal charge. So if they want to come into the program and seek the treatment, and if they want to bail, they can bail. We have nothing to hold over them. But that is something that we can offer. And so we are encouraging that if they do go out to an overdose and if they want to, we can talk to them about pathway 2 and get them in the program.
And what about, sometimes we refer to them as frequent flyers, but people who, they might go through the process, do the things so they can avoid whatever, criminal penalty there is. Do we have, what's the recidivism into your program? I know it's early.
So right now.
How many are repeat patients?
So right now we have one person who has been referred a second time.
Okay.
Yeah. And he failed the first time. And so. now-
Okay, so he was criminally charged. He's back in
Yeah.
the
Correct.
system. Now, is he back in the system to deflect that first original charge, or has he got another charge and
He's
he's
got
back?
an additional.
He's got an
charge.
additional charge
Okay.
pending. Yep.
And then 22 to 28 pages of statistical data. Now, I'll just say this. I don't think anybody likes doing paperwork. I mean, it's always
lot.
mind-boggling when I go to the doctor's office. It's like, I've seen you before. Why am I filling this out? Didn't we supposed to have an electronic medical record so you don't have to pull this
You don't
ticket
have to
from
do
me?
this. Yes.
You're my doctor. But I guess my question is that every time you do an intake, it's 22 to 28 pages of paperwork? And
Yes.
also, how long does that take? And is it potentially possible? I mean, I assume half this data is probably required by your grant or whatever,
It
but
is.
is it possible that the amount, the sheer volume of the paperwork and meeting time required to answer these questions is potentially causing people to just not want to be part of it?
They don't know it. The clients don't know that this is the behind the scenes. So they're not even affected. by
Okay,
it.
so you're not inpatient questioning them like, hey.
No, we're not
what's your
grilling
age
them,
and all
no.
that. You're just pulling
No.
that data and trying to research it, or how do you pull it?
So
Oh, so.
That's a lot of data to pull
it is a lot of data.
without a person telling you.
Yeah, no,
we've
so
worked
for
with it.
any outpatient client who wants to get treatment through CBH, and this is deflection, DUI, family court, whatever, they have to do a drug and alcohol assessment. So in that assessment, I've slightly modified mine to include some of the stuff that wasn't in there before, just so I can gather that info. And while I go through that with them, it takes about an hour to hour and a half. And I do it in a conversational way. They kind of don't even realize that I'm collecting all this stuff, but I'm punching away and I just get most of it there. So, and then throughout our next couple of sessions, if anything's missing, I collect it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm constantly having a conversation. Once I get the assessment, I go through my 22 to 28 pages, go through it, make sure I've got everything entered, and then we enter it in. And we're, on par with on that.
And who is not eligible for deflection?
So they, anybody that is not a resident in the county.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep, basically.
All right. Any other questions?
I would just ask, what are the characteristics of those that successfully complete the program? And then like, what can we as a community do to ensure that those factors are present in the community? Yeah.
Sorry, I don't.
Well, like housing or
Yeah, housing. Oh,
job, or like what types of things are you noticing help people succeed? And like, what are the things that we need to be thinking of from like a systems level to ensure that we are doing what we can to make sure that this is a
yeah, so
success?
housing is a big one. Luckily that's gotten better over the last couple of years around here as far as like, for unsheltered folks, places to go. So, and I know everybody in town, so if that's an issue, I can try to help them get there. Employment is a good one. And, I refer a lot of people to WorkSource to participate in the STEP program because they'll help with clothes, bus passes,
Okay.
all things people need. But yeah, that stuff. And then, medication for opiate use is really life-changing. I've seen a lot of people struggle for years, get started on medication and be successful, be parents again, be able to go rejoin the workforce. So that's something that I really try to encourage people to participate in, is medication.
Are they getting better? I remember Suboxone.
Mhm.
It used to be they just switch it and they never got off Suboxone.
Yeah, I think I think, so my opinion is methadone is harder to get off of than
Yeah.
Suboxone. People can stay on Suboxone for as long as they want, basically. But in my experience, people they're encouraged, like 6 to 9 months, they're kind of encouraged to stay on it. After that,
Yeah,
if
to
they
keep
want to
them-
taper down, and I've seen a handful of people like choose to taper down. I suggest they taper down because they're like, well, I'm just done, and they quit. And it's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
On the issue related to, so, I mean, so county's providing through grants or whatever, Noxalone to anybody who basically wants it, camps and stuff like that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you, while you're providing an antidote to narcotics, is there also, what is the involvement? Are you guys providing needles as well?
No.
That's
Yeah.
done through a different program?
So yeah, that is Classic County Public Health that facilitates the syringe exchange. We do have an employee that goes along with them, but all they're doing is the naloxone training and handout. But yeah, we don't hand out syringes. What we have had is, since obtaining the nasal spray naloxone has been so hard to get from where we get it, we have been shipped vials with syringes, but those aren't going to be the type of syringes that people utilize to use their substances because they're not fun to use. And you're going to want to use that syringe on a person who is not awake. 'Cause they're
So
big.
I guess my question, you're right, is just because as the camps get more and more littered with needles, which becomes a health hazard to both public employees cleaning that up, first responders who have to deal with it, and volunteers who are cleaning up abandoned sites. It's pretty scary when you start seeing needles popping up with, the needle bent and stuck in a tree or sticking out of the ground or whatever. Is there any sharps or disposal that's provided when you do provide those so that, and is it collected after it's disposed?
So yes, we don't collect them because what our goal is, so yes, we provide the sharps containers, the red boxes. But in order to utilize a syringe exchange, you have to give the used needles that you have in order to obtain the same amount of needles that are clean back. So what that does is it reduces our infectious disease rate. People aren't sharing needles, they're not sharing things, and they're not getting more and more infections, creating another huge price tag on medical care, emergency medical services and all of that. So that's the purpose of the syringe exchange, is you have to have needles to get needles. So if you are seeing needles scattered, those people aren't utilizing a syringe exchange. Those people are probably going to a pharmacy and purchasing a bag of needles saying, I am diabetic and I ran out of needles, and so on and so forth. That you can do it at every single pharmacy and every single store that has a pharmacy. You can order them online. Like, you can access needles very, 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 very easily. But if they're if you're seeing them scattered, those people aren't participating in a syringe exchange because they can't get needles unless they're giving some back, and they get the same exact amount that they're swapping out.
And one question I know has been brought up before, but I don't think we ever got a good answer to. Sounds like you're knowledgeable about this, so.
I try.
Is if a diabetic went to the needle exchange, can they exchange their needles? Is it no questions asked?
100%.
Okay, so diabetics are capable of taking their used needles if they're not a drug user, going back and getting them back. Okay, it's good to know. All right, any other questions for the presenters? Thank you.
Thank you very much. for the
Appreciate you coming.
opportunity.
Yeah. Chief, I got a question for you. I noticed in your police report, there was 14 narcotics and drug calls in the last year to date. That's 6 months. But we've only got 3 referrals. Can you give I'm sure there's a lot of out of city people too as well that we're catching, but can you give a little update on our participation in deflection, why it's 3?
Well, it's hard I'd have to pull the exact stats because that could be anything from just paraphernalia to actual drugs
Gotcha.
to.
That's just
It's a generalized category. One thing that my department does not do a good job of is documenting refusals. And we had a meeting recently here, the deflection met here at the fire training room. And that was one of the things that was brought up, that we are not getting the information to deflection that we have offered and they refused. And that's the only way that they're getting that information is from us. And so if we're not doing that, then we're missing that. The other thing is until February when they expanded, anybody we had contact with that didn't meet the criteria, then we weren't offering deflection to. So hopefully that's getting better. But you're right, there's a deficiency there with us not recording that we have offered, or they're not. The one thing that my officers didn't understand or was having a problem with is when we did the expansion, they hadn't expanded their minds of what they can offer deflection for and stuff like that. You brought up a good point that it would be nice to, when we have an overdose or something like that, we should be offering resources, in general. And one of them is the second path to enter deflection. And the first path obviously has to be tied to some type of, criminal.
I sense that the refusals are a lot higher than we're reporting. That's,
They are, and so it's one of those things. And then we have regular. You brought up the regular customers or the regular people we interact with. Some of them are not interested whatsoever in getting off. The success stories that I've seen from deflection are a little bit different place in their life and a little bit different and stuff. But the problem is that if we don't offer it and we don't, put it out there, then we know what the answer is going to be. Is there is going to be no recovery and no getting off of their substance addiction. And so we have to have something. I'm excited about the deflection program. You can see the numbers and stuff like that it does offer another path. And it's not just because it's true, 110 was a failure, but it's also true that we're not going to arrest our way out of a drug addiction problem. And so we need something like this.
okay. So do I understand you correctly that we're remedying the reporting issue?
Yeah, so former Sergeant Pierce and Sergeant McCoy, we're trying to work with officers so Sergeant Pierce had started doing an audit of reports to go back through and see what the pattern is, why we're not, offering or why we're not recording that. And it's something as simple as if they put it in their report, then Cat or Val have to catch it and send it. And so we need to change even the routing box up above to say deflection. And so we have a way that officers have to mark something on there so it can be sent.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you. All right, we'll move on to 7B, consideration of enterprise zone renewal, resolution number 2706. Kevin Leahy.
Evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here this evening to ask for your approval to redesignate the enterprise zone. The enterprise zone was started in 2015, and the City of Warrenton and Clatsop County and the Port of Astoria were the original members. And then the City of Astoria was added in 2018 with Bob Dorn and Hayek Maritime and the downtown area here. So I've been working with City Manager Moberg, with all the team. Basically, the enterprise zone, we're not looking at any changes at enterprise zone in terms of the mapping, with the exception of in Astoria. We've had to make a slight change because to be in an enterprise zone approval in a rural area, we have to have one of two components. One has to be that our median income, is at 80% of the state average, or the unemployment rate needs to be 2% higher than the state average. And we are not 2% higher, thankfully, on the unemployment rate. We're right about the same as the state average. The median income was slightly a tick above. So we worked with Business Oregon and with the City of Astoria and with the staff and adjusted the mapping in Astoria, which is on the maps that you have in your packet this evening, changed that. The other maps remain exactly the same. Mayor, you'd asked me about the mapping, and I forwarded you what I had received from the county, and also happy to follow up on any further questions with County Manager Boone and with the team there at the county. But the maps that are in your packet are the big global map Exhibit A, but I had just forwarded to the mayor and to Esther the kind of the backup of all the maps from all the areas, including, of course, for Warrenton, skipping on Hammond, et cetera, because the mayor had a question at the beginning of the meeting, so I think that answers it. And so in terms of the enterprise zone, I'm happy to answer any questions of enterprise zone. We've had 4 participants so far on the enterprise zone since we started that. We have 1 here in Warrenton and 3 in Astoria. It's the Schooler meal plant, which we know is currently closed. And we are looking for opportunities to have other discussions with businesses looking to enter into the enterprise zone agreement. It's been a great partnership with the four partners. We're kind of unique in the fact that we have with the 2 cities, the county and the port, but we work very collaboratively. We met months ago and kind of went through the the language. And I would say the other change besides that slight change in the city of Astoria that I already mentioned is there's a school support fee that the legislature voted in a few years ago. And what has to happen is the school districts that are part of enterprise zone, which is Warrenton, Astoria, and Napa, that those school districts can basically charge a fee between 15 and 30% of the savings on the property taxes to that employer that would be able to fund back to the school some of the property tax dollars that were lost. The caveat is that on this, it's very complex and confusing. At the end of the day, like I've been working with Mike Mohoff, for example, here in Warrenton, and the school board passed 15%, and Astoria School District 15%. That's the minimum, and Napa was 30%. And so basically, that's mandatory. Where a school district, let's say we have a new business here in Warrenton that wants to apply for the enterprise zone, and so what happens is the schools. This is then on the schools. They would then invoice that employer for the savings on the property taxes for a certain time period. The caveat I mentioned, the confusing part is it kind of goes back. Somebody said basically talking like to Craig Hoppus, Astoria School Superintendent, that basically what happens is it kind of goes back into the money that's applied goes back to the state school fund, and kind of like what do we get out of it? So, but it is a legislative measure. And one of the school districts said, we don't want to apply anything. We want it to be zero because we want to support the business community, but checked with Business Oregon and it has to be a minimum of 15%. So that's written in the resolution for this evening. I met last week with the Port of Astoria and they approved the resolution unanimously. Last night I met with Astoria City Council and presented like I'm doing with the Warrenton City Commission tonight. They approved unanimously. Here this evening asking for your approval of the resolution. And then tomorrow evening I will be with the County Commission and for the same approach. And we do have a deadline of June 30th, 2025 in order to get this redesignation or we start all over again. So
so I'm looking at the map you sent me. Thank you. For some reason,
yeah,
email's disabled here. And I did notice that, and I was talking to the port earlier today, Matt McGrath with the port, asking why a portion of their own properties on the East Kippanon Peninsula got somehow not included. Because the map you sent me does confirm what I thought, which was that the DSL line is not the DSL ownership line is not the one that delineates between the port's eligibility and the enterprise zone and not. And so I honestly don't know why that line got written the way it did, because I'm looking at the county GIS based on the map and it doesn't align significantly different. And so in talking to the port, they thought that it was included. It's not all of it, at least the valuable portions. And so my hope would be that we would include that in the map. The other thing too about that is my understanding is from being around the last two renewals, so the initial and the renewal, was that Warrenton was only going to be applying the enterprise zone to industrial properties, but that's more of a local decision because the applications go to this local jurisdiction for approval anyway.
correct.
And city manager, is that your understanding too of how we vet it? And so I just want to make that clear. There are some curious properties that are not zoned industrial that I guess on my head scratches a little bit about how that was. But in any case, that's the other thing I want to be clear about is my understanding is that the school support fee, while it does provide the school some extra funds that would be locally appropriated, it wouldn't be something that would go to the state and then get washed out and thrown to the schools, correct? That's just a direct invoice, a direct payment?
I would check back with the schools and the mayor because I didn't get a clear answer on that.
Because my understanding is, this, even though, people, when they first think property tax exemption, they think, oh, my schools are going to lose money.
Mhm.
But in reality, they're getting paid per student under the state equalization formula. So it really shouldn't affect their budget item at all.
Right.
Other than an academic exercise about who's paying.
Correct.
Because property taxes don't directly go towards
Correct.
school districts except for Jewel and maybe another one, but which may change now with HCP. But
Right.
Okay, so yeah, that's my only query is that how do we get all port properties on the East Kippanon Peninsula included into that map? Is it too late to throw it in?
Well, I was going to say the question would be, because then that would be an amendment. We've already had the two approvals. We had a discussion last night. One of the Astoria City Councilors asked about hotels. about, a new council. I mean, and said, what if we want to partner with the port, whatever? I said, that's totally up to the council. But we said that would be after the fact. That would be like an amendment. So we want to be flexible. So this evening, again, requesting that we keep things that they are, but in terms of your question, Mayor, looking after the renewal, sitting down with the four sponsors.
I don't want to endanger the whole zone just for a renewal, but I do want to make sure that we do make note that that we will include that.
Okay, yes.
I mean, and that would be my suggestion to the commission is that we would approve resolution number 2706 with a note in the record that that we would also do it with the understanding that if any of the port property on the East Kippanon Peninsula came forward for enterprise zone, if it didn't fully include it, we would include it in a map amendment or go through that process.
Amendment.
Because it makes no sense to only include half of it. You know what I mean?
So point of order, just making sure I understood your motion, Mayor. So your motion is to approve what is before you tonight, but you would like a further amendment down the road where possible to include?
Well, I think
Because
at
of
this
the
current moment,
timeline?
because we need to get it forward, we would,
Yes.
I'm not moving this, but I'm suggesting to the commission that we do move resolution number 2706 with a note into the record, into the minutes, the permanent record, that the East Kippanon Peninsula in its entirety for the port properties would be considered something that we support for enterprise zone inclusion, including the lots that are not included at this current moment. That way, if somebody wants to come back and they're like, well, it's not there, and we're going to say,
Right.
no, the port can actually say, hey, actually,
Mhm.
we'll just have to do a map amendment for it. But if we have a deadline of the 30th, that's definitely something that we don't want to endanger.
Appreciate
endanger
that.
at that
Thank you.
point.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
I don't know if the commission feels similar, but Commissioner Bell, Commissioner Salcio, any objections?
Objection.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to approve resolution number 2706 with the note in the permanent record that the city supports enterprise zone inclusion of all port properties on the East Kippanon Peninsula?
Second.
Moved and seconded, Mitchell Poe to approve resolution number 20 or adopt resolution number 2706 with a note in the permanent record related to inclusion of all port properties on the East Kippanon Peninsula in the enterprise zone, including a necessary map amendment if needs be. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sorry to say that. We'll go on to Nygaard lease renewal. Daisy Point, City Manager.
Yeah, you have before you tonight, this is amendment to the lease agreement with the Warrenton Fiber Company, which is our tenants out at Tansy Point, as we call it. And this is an amendment to extend that lease an additional amount of time, as well as adding in a CPI amount beyond what the existing agreement is, and then also the slight change to the tonnage.
An increase in the dockage fee.
Yeah, the dockage, yeah.
Any questions for
And-
staff?
And Nygaard is here if you have any questions for him.
Any questions of staff? All right. Does the lessee want to speak at all, or you good to go? Any major questions? Pretty straightforward. All right. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the Tansy Point lease with Warrenton Fiber Company?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, Dyer Mitchell to approve the amended Tansy Point lease with Warrenton Fiber Company. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Pretty easy. All right, ordinance number 1295, shopping carts. Chief. And for the note, there's a public record from Ryan Jacobson, the general manager at Warrenton Costco.
Man, I wish this would go as smooth as that last one. So I always try to stay out of controversial ordinances, chickens, things like that.
But you can't hide.
Or stuff. And then, of course, I never bring forth,
and chickens.
I never bring forth change orders like someone else in the back of the room. So I try to stay out of stuff. Anyway, so shopping carts. So just a little history. We've been kind of dealing with this with previous city manager and current city manager. They were mostly being dealt with the other end of the building, the planning department, and actually cost our planner then, Jay, an injury because of shopping carts. And then when Christian came on and was with the code compliance, and then he kind of came to me and said, Yeah, I've collected, when was that? Was that February? He had collected 134 shopping carts and I'm like, wait, what? And I thought it was getting better and I think it has. We don't see the huge, shopping cart areas that have, look like basically cows out in the field. There's so many of them in an area, but we still have problems. So just in a little history, we tried to work with the businesses. Esther had been, City Manager Moberg had been emailing them whenever we'd see carts and stuff. And for the most part, they were kind of responsive to get out there and pick them up. Some businesses much better than others, of course. And of course, some businesses have a much bigger problem than others. And so in looking at this, I know the mayor, you had approached me a while back about an ordinance and doing an ordinance about electronic, locks and things like that. And we were always cognizant of not causing the businesses a lot of cost and stuff, especially our neighbors across the street at Main Street Market that wouldn't be able to afford things like that and don't have the number of shopping carts. But I don't know if you all realize, but there are 14 businesses in Warrenton that offer shopping carts to their customers. Fred Meyer's Natural Grocers, Ross, Main Street Market, TJ Maxx, Goodwill, Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, Dollar Tree, Petco, Harbor Freight Tools, Chef's Store, and TSC, Tractor Supply Company. All offer shopping carts. Last week, I went out and gave them a copy of the draft ordinance and also a letter with bullet points on what the ordinance would require them to do. Also a copy of the 2 ORS statutes. It's basically the same thing that was in your packets, but I went out and hand delivered them and spoke to the managers that I could that were there and tried to explain, why we're doing this and what we want to do. Personally, I don't really want to, we don't want to create an ordinance and create something, but we don't know what else to do to encourage businesses to, number one, go out and collect the carts that are leaving their property. And number two, post and follow through with the fact that it is a theft when someone leaves their property with one of their shopping carts. Now, I do understand that certain local businesses, TJ Maxx, Home Depot, some of them can't speak for corporate. So that's why they do not allow us to cite someone or to take kind of enforcement action when we find someone with one of their carts off of the property, because they have to get approval from up above and that approval never comes. They just basically want the cart back and what have you. So when I wrote the ordinance originally, I did not have any of the items in there that referred to creating a line, a phone line, a non-toll-free phone line that they have to have. That has to be posted on the cart, that someone can call when they find a cart out somewhere, and then someone can go and retrieve it. I had removed all that out of there, but we ran it by legal, and legal says, no, that's in the ORS. Those restrictions or those requirements must be in the ordinance. So I put them back in there. The only thing that I added to that, we looked at other communities' ordinances. The only thing I added was the option to go out and have us retrieve a cart and take it back, but charge a fee for that, because metro area businesses have companies that can go out and they contract with them to corral or go get their carts, and then they pay them either a monthly fee or by cart fee to go out and do that. So update, I got contacted when I went out to Walmart last week to deliver the letter. I spoke to one of their managers, they call them coaches, but one of their coaches, and he told me it's also their loss prevention manager. And he said, hey, just so you know, we are now contracting with somebody to go out and get our carts. I said, oh, can you share that information with me? And would they be willing to be available to the other businesses here in town, namely the larger businesses that we have problems? And our shopping carts, every business that has shopping carts, we've found at least one or more of their shopping carts somewhere in this community. Some of the businesses, we find a lot of their shopping carts. And a misnomer is that it's houseless or unsheltered people taking the carts. And I would say they are less than half, and it's over half is people going to the bus stop, going home, going somewhere and using the cart to get from point A to point B. And we're not finding them out in a homeless camp somewhere. Now, do we find those in homeless camps? Absolutely. Do we find them on the way to homeless camps? Yes. But I don't think I think that's less of a problem than it is people just removing the carts and going to the bus stop. And we get a lot of accumulation around the bus stops, especially at 101 and the one now up in front, that's open again up in front of Walmart. Some businesses are doing a better job. You have a letter from Costco, the manager there, and they do and we will admit, they do a much better job. They don't have as many carts leaving their property from their customers because they're member-based and they show up in vehicles.
And the
But
carts are
what-
huge too.
The carts that leave, I think, are out in the corrals and someone is going through the lot and taking them out of a corral and using it for whatever. Especially their new, we haven't seen any of their new carts, but if I wanted a shopping cart, I'd want one of their new ones because they're really cool. So anyway, so they do a good job, and I can see his point of view that shouldn't have this on there. When I delivered the letter to Tractor Supply, one of the assistant managers was very upset with me and said, I can't believe if someone steals our cart, you're going to fine us. And I said, well, that's not exactly what it says. And he says, yes, it is. It says $50 right here. And he proceeded to give me back the letter and everything. I go, hold on. I said, that says that if we call you and you don't come out and get it in a timely manner, you can be cited. We're just encouraging that. I said, the thing that I would like is it to be posted that if you leave this property with one of our carts, it's a crime and we will charge you with it. And he says, well, we'll do that all day long, you know? So talked with city manager today, and we're trying to figure out, you know, do we need an ordinance? Yes. And if we do, how do we write that? So, you know, it's getting in there what we want and stuff. Today, I then got a call from someone from Specialized General Services. That is the company that is contracting with Walmart to pick up their carts. They send someone out from Portland once a week. They go out and get their carts, and they're just going out and grabbing them where they see them. That's not from a call-based situation where someone's calling and saying, we have one of your carts, or we know where a cart is. I spoke to them, and they're not on. I did give them the link if they could come on. Of course, I think they're based out of somewhere in the Midwest, and so it's probably 8 o'clock there, or 9, almost 9. Anyway, so they said, we work with Walmart and work with the Walmart here, and we have other Walmarts around the state that we work with in other states, and we will work with anybody, and you can share our information with any of the businesses, and we will, when we send our contractor out to get or our employee out to get stuff, they can sweep, because he says our employee is telling us, man, I'm not finding a whole lot of the Walmart carts, but there's Home Depot carts, there's Fred Meyer's carts, and then a lot of little black carts that don't have anything on them. And I know those are coming from Dollar General. I'm sorry, Dollar Tree, not Dollar General, Dollar Tree. And because I recognize that cart, and they have quite a few leaving there. So they're willing to do that. And I didn't ask them their fees, what they charge or whatever. And I'm trying to hopefully we can come to a happy compromise with what we need to do. Do we need an ordinance? And if we do, you know, there's a lot of stuff the businesses are gonna have to do with signage, marking carts. So most of the carts are already marked. They say Walmart, they say Costco, they say Fred Meyer's, but they don't have numbers on there, which is what the ordinance requires and what our legal is telling it should be on there. And so that would be something they would have to come up with or to comply with the ordinance. So I don't know if that's a good enough background on, you know, and an update on stuff. And if.
So do I hear you correctly, Chief? You're saying that it sounded like to me that you were saying early on that with businesses that aren't frequent flyers to this problem, that potentially they could be exempted from this program, or there was talk about exempting from the program until it became an issue, or sort of like we have the ordinance in effect, but.
That would be a legal question. I'm not sure what because once the ordinance is in effect, it applies to everybody.
True.
One of the questions is whether in the ordinance you would give the city manager, for example, or the police chief, the authority to work with the ones that are the good practicers. You know, for example, Main Street, they don't lose their carts. I have yet to see one of their carts outside that is not immediately retrieved. I think I've heard they even chased down.
They chase people down. They'll leave
parking
people at the front. When I went over and
Cart,
delivered
too.
stuff.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
with
they
their
can't
cart.
afford
Yeah.
to lose a car. Carts, it's going to be a theft 3 for most part because it's They're from $100 to, $200, or it could be a theft too. But you don't get into the felony unless they do one of those electric carts. And we have recovered a few of those that have left businesses.
And there's some others too. I mean, Costco's a good example. Another one's Ross. Their carts don't go outside of their building. So for them to be required to put stickers on them is a little ridiculous because they have a stick that blocks them from leaving the building. So the suggestion in my mind might be that under the authority of this ordinance, the city manager could say there is an exemption if you can demonstrate you are not abusing your carts, out and the policy may be something like, well, if there have not been 5 carts that we've had complaints about or seen around in a 6-month period or more than that, then obviously you're doing a good job and we don't need to have you in this program, that type of thing.
So ideally, you would like to have that company police all the carts, and then it would be a non-issue.
If somebody is going out and collecting the carts, it would be a non-issue, because that's the only reason we're here, is that these things are getting left, and they do become not only an eyesore, but they become a safety hazard. If there's a strong enough wind, these things will take off.
Well, they're a drainage issue too. I've seen a lot of them in the ditches.
Yep.
They collect grass and other clippings, and then they become blockages,
Yeah,
which
they
then
block
causes flooding.
natural dams.
So would you want time to talk to the businesses and see if they'd all get on board before we pass an ordinance?
I don't know that we can compel them to hire this contractor.
No.
Some of these are very small businesses. And so to say, well, you have to do this hiring, that's not within our jurisdiction.
We're basically looking to find out if we should create the code and the ordinance, and then whatever they decide to do to make it right within their businesses will be upon them.
Right.
So if they could show they have this company hired and this has cleared up the issue, we could say then under the ordinance authority, they could be exempted as long as they have that contract.
So I guess the question then becomes, how do you comply with the state law, which is the ORS that enables us to make this ordinance, because we wouldn't be able to do it without it, if I understand correctly. Because it was such a big issue that the legislature did actually create an ordinance or, an ORS to be able to enable local jurisdictions to do this. So I guess my question becomes a couple things. Is there a way that we can add in a program exemption, like a clause in the ordinance that basically says if there's a theft prevention device that is rendered effective by X amount of stats, whatever, a good faith effort, if there's electronic locks, is it the big poles that Ross uses, whatever. And then also, but if, a program, or if the issue becomes an issue, if it comes to the point where we collect so many carts in a period of time, and we're the ones picking them up, that then it would trigger, for the requirements. I think all of them should probably post that, yes, stealing a cart is a crime.
I agree. I don't think there's any exemption.
And
for
that's
the
not going to cost
stealing.
anybody any money to say.
You can put one sign up outside your building.
Labeling the
Yeah.
carts can become expensive, but at the same time, the more carts you have, labeling is it's that or theft
Don't-
prevention devices.
Don't we have a false alarm thing where after they have so many false alarms,
do.
they get charged? So many carts?
Well, I'm not sure if the ORS allows us to do that. That's the thing.
That's more like the return portion that we can charge.
Because the ORS specifically calls out that you can only charge up to $50 for return of carts, so to speak. But or is it return of carts, or is it $50 in the ORS for something specific? Because the other one was to allow the city manager. I think it was for if we dispose of them, she can.
Yeah, the ORS sets out what we can do if they don't come and get them.
If they don't
We
retrieve
can
it. it's
dispose of
a fee
them
of
and stuff, but then
$50.
we can fine
Yeah.
for the 72 hours or whatever you want to prescribe as the amount.
And if they don't retrieve it within 30 days, we can dispose of it.
And then if the city may return a shopping cart
Mhm.
for a fee established. So the fine is $50 to the person who's on the owner. Okay. But then the theft charge is of course on the person who steals.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, and I would love to be able to put in there that you have to be a victim and you have to allow us to do that when we catch somebody off thing. But I'm guessing legal is going to scoff at that everybody has their choice whether or not they want to be a victim of a crime. You can't force them.
To
But
take
I think the
Aren't there some
signage
things that say that prima facie evidence, like in terms of if you, simple possession suggests that
Yeah, so-
can you say that like basically shopping carts that are still labeled are not
Didn't they charge the guy out on the causeway with the, remember, we had a shopping cart incident?
We've had several successful, theft charges and stuff like that with a willing victim though.
But I know, yeah, like in some cases, I remember when Starbucks had issues, they couldn't give us any of their camera information. And we've had
Yeah.
issues where Home Depot wouldn't charge people taking thousands of dollars of material out of the store.
Yep.
Because corporate just doesn't allow them to charge.
And that's the
So-
problem. They're corporate.
But that
often.
causes ancillary effects because if they allow theft and people get, the criminal underworld of the town or whoever finds out, more people steal, which then spreads, what I mean, it encourages an activity that's not good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be in favor of a sort of exemption, but I think everybody should be required to post that stealing shopping carts is a theft. And I guess the question I have is do you require that shopping carts, if a store or whatever sells or surpluses them, that there's some sort of way to, mark or destroy or, whatever that is? Because I mean, the biggest issue is you're going to run into somebody who's going to be like, I bought this cart,
Wouldn't they have to be identifiable and numbered if we said it was a theft? And that's what
No,
you're saying, right?
I don't
No.
know that we'd ever,
We wouldn't number them. They just have the name of the owner,
Yeah,
the store
okay.
owner.
Yeah.
does that free go to
We
muni
don't
court or does it go to
inventory.
district?
everything goes to circuit court.
Circuit, 'cause
We
it's
don't do
crime.
we don't do
Yeah.
crimes here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we definitely have to do is contact legal because that word exemption, that's going to be illegal.
Well, I think it's maybe not a word of exemption, but rather it meets the city's
Very passive.
criteria for keeping their carts on property.
Alternative compliance, call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, compliance was my thought. too.
Alternative compliance. Because I mean, I think, if you have a business that's
In compliance, why would you?
saying,
have
hey,
to
you know
make
what,
them-
we're doing a really good job of it.
Yeah.
But if they're not controlling their cars, not picking them up, I mean, I counted 7 today alone.
Mhm.
One or two were in a ditch, a couple were in a field, another was on the side of the road, they become eyesores real quick.
Right.
And, if it gets windy, that's even more scary if it's close to the road, especially when they abandon them on the right of ways. So, what's the commission's pleasure on this?
Some other questions.
Yeah, Commissioner Slaser,
Is there an existing toll-free number or is that something that we also have to set up?
they would have.
No, so that's the statute requires them to set something up.
So every
And-
business has to set up their own?
Well, so that's
toll-free?
where we.
Yeah, I have just the implementation of this seems a little.
It would be a cost, definitely, if you had to set something up like that.
Mhm.
If they all agreed, like Commissioner Dyer said, to join with this contract with this company, that number would be the number then that people can call. I offered to say we could set up on our phone tree at the police department's number. And then if you want to report an abandoned shopping cart, press.
Yeah,
And
like
then
a
it would go
311.
into a voicemail that we would check.
I mean, we could basically set that up and then we either, because those don't really cost anything other than the toll-free number, right? So, and staff time.
Right.
So at that point, I guess you could send it to code compliance or whatever, and then the businesses can just make that the registered number if they wanted to, right?
Yes, it will, I've offered it. Obviously, we just have to make sure that that's okay.
If they don't want to label it and create their own, like a smaller business,
Well,
so to
it would make
speak.
it easier for consumers to have one single number to call instead of like, I have to call this for Ross, I have to call this for Costco.
Well, but it's not communal property. So if it's, say if I'm business A and I have shopping carts and I want to control that, then it's going to be my process, whatever corporate's going to require, their insurance, their legal, they're going to have their own number. So I would say that if we create a number, they could voluntarily select our number. But I think it's not going to be one size fits all because some are going to just prefer to go part of the city's process because having your own number could be a pain. Small business owner that's, family owned or whatever, and they're, short-staffed or whatever, they're not going to want to do that. And I just working for a large corporation, there's all sorts of interesting, legal and
Sure.
reviews.
There's a
But
lot
it's-
of minutia.
If it's a corporate owned number, how do we know when the report was made to go out and find them within 72 hours if it wasn't picked up?
Because we're the ones finding it in 72 hours to pick it.
No, not if it's me that calls the number. Like, if I don't report to the police don't know the date and time.
Well, I guess what would happen is
Right.
we would retrieve it and then we would let them know, because city shall contact the person to report. And then they have 72 hours afterwards to retrieve the abandoned shopping cart. And then if not, then that's disposed of as the city deems appropriate. And then the city may, it's not shall, impose a fine of $50 on the owner of business or entity of the shopping cart if they do not retrieve the cart within 72 hours of they receive a report of the existence. And the city shall release the shopping cart to the owner upon payment of the fine. So it sounds like to me, as I'm reading it, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, this all gets triggered by code enforcement picking up a cart.
Well,
Some of them.
some of them, it reads two different ways. One way, Commissioner Salasia is correct. One of the ways is a person calls their 1-800 number and the business may or may not pick it up. If they do, great. If they don't, however, and we get wind of it and it's been more than 72 hours, we can institute a fine. So most likely it would be a secondhand, like after the fact, somebody would come to us and say, I reported this shopping cart. It never got picked up. That was 5 days ago. And then we would institute a fine. The other option would be if our staff see these shopping carts out and about, they either call or our code compliance officer sees it. He reports it to the store, gives them the chance to pick it up. If they don't, then we pick it up, return it, and assess the fine or dispose of it, whatever is appropriate.
Alternatively, this all has may and except for shall retrieve. The city can do a pilot. We can pass the ordinance, do a 6-month non-enforcement jaunt, see how it goes and where it goes. And then depending on how that goes and how the reaction is, we can then go forwards towards, all right, we're full implementation. Passing an ordinance doesn't mean you have to enforce it. And so, especially when it says may instead of shall, so to speak. So this commission does have options to do a temporary pause to see how it shakes out and pull it back. But I do think that we should probably clarify in the language before we pass what the policy is related to, compliance alternatives, so to speak.
And especially I think of the small businesses that are not our recurring offenders.
Which aren't
to give
recurring,
them the
yeah.
opportunity instead of immediately saying you now have to buy X amount of stickers and X amount of signs, to say, we know you're already trying to be in compliance and are very close or are in compliance. Here's the options you have to not have to do all these things. And if you should continue, still have to buy the signs about theft of shopping carts, but the rest of this, there's an alternative. That would be the hope.
So,
And then what is our timeline for implementation to require these of the businesses? Do they need to add the stickers
Yeah,
in 6
30
months?
day to,
Oh, wow.
once an ordinance goes into effect.
Or
Yeah.
all the labeling,
Fast.
signs?
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean we have to go that route. It just means that's an ordinance has 30 days after passage to go into effect. And it sounds like we've made business outreach, not all of us engaged with us. And so at that point,
Chief has reached out to all of them.
okay, so at that point, I think, again, I still think we need to have some sort of alternative compliance measure that's cleared by legal before we go forward on the resolution. I'm still in favor of this because I think we've got to do something about it. It is becoming a more prolific issue, and as more retailers come to the city of Warrenton, shopping carts are going to be a greater blight, so to speak, unintended shopping carts. So,
Would- Go ahead.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Would the commission like this to be brought back at the next meeting with that updated language, I guess is the question.
I guess Commissioner Mitchell, what's your thoughts on just in general on this, and then also that?
Yeah, I think a business has a responsibility, to police their carts it's part of doing business. It's not like this is the first city they've ever had this issue in. So, they get away with what they get away with until somebody tells them they can't get away with it. And do people walk away shopping carts? Yes, they do. Giving them 30 days to post signage that says that fines will be, or it is illegal, or for them to put into their businesses and to make people aware of that. Absolutely. I think 30 days is plenty of time to make that happen. For us to charge a fee of $50 for the manpower and the time and the effort that it takes is a minimum cost, I think, to what it would cost us to do what we have to do to be doing their job. So, I think that being too lenient on them really sets a wrong precedence to those businesses who come next.
Okay. So do I understand you correctly that you're in favor of the ordinance as is without alternative compliance?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd
Commissioner?
be for that too.
Okay. Commissioner Sassia?
I'd like to see alternative compliance options.
Yeah, and I also would like to have the wording for alternative compliance in the ordinance.
Okay.
before.
Parliamentary query, sorry, did I get you off?
What's that? No,
We-
I'm good.
okay. A parliamentary query. Can we do first reading, hold, and then add alternative compliance, or is that a radical change? Because that's not changing the substantive aspect of the law.
It's still changing a portion of the ordinance itself. And I
Yeah.
think that's sufficient enough that you would have to reread the
Yeah,
title.
because
Yeah.
you don't really have the amended language crafted yet, so you're not approving it, do the first reading as amended.
Mhm.
So you don't
I-
have that language
I
crafted yet.
personally feel more comfortable because I do need to run any of this language by legal. And so if they make significant changes or say no, then we're
That
gonna need to
kinda
come
brings it
back.
back.
And I do have a couple follow-up questions for you real quick, if you're ready. Okay. So one of the things I did put in there that legal let us leave in there was that there's an option, and this could be one of the alternatives as well, is that all of these carts that code compliance is taking back, a fee would be set by the city manager and included in our fee schedule that what it would cost. Most of the companies are charging around $7 to take carts back. And at 134 carts, and that's quite amount of time and stuff. If the business would agree, I think the city manager had said, yeah, if they're in agreement to, oh, we'll pay that, and then we could have that be one of the alternatives too. Again, is it stopping the problem of people taking the carts off, or just fixing the problem of the carts being out there? That's the only part it's fixing. It's not stopping the thing. So I agree with you, Mayor, that the signage needs to be staying there regardless, and that needs to go up, that at least it's going to keep some of the semi-honest people honest when they get in the, oh crap, I can't leave. This is a theft if I'm doing that, whether or not we can end up citing somebody or not, at least those people are going to stop. Now, the carts are probably going to be out at the entrance to the store and stuff, but that's at least one of the problems that all the businesses were saying was they incorporate, or they get a bunch of liability when they send their employees off-site to go get carts.
It's because they might get injured or whatever.
Yep. And then there's not only a civil liability, but an insurance liability and all kinds of stuff. So, but they do it because they have to go, and we're making them go get their carts and stuff like that. So if we have alternatives, and then if any of them want to contract with this service, that'd be great too as well. We're going to have to figure out how the calls come in though. I think Commissioner Salacio is correct. Multiple numbers is going to be very hard to track. Having one number, if we could do that, that would be great. And then we just have to publicize that.
We could just make if we wanted to, we could just say that's the number.
Dispatch then could also, when they receive calls about carts or whatever, they just automatically forward it to our number, and it goes into the phone tree, and then they can do it that way.
Commissioner Jack?
We could charge them $7 if they pick it up, and it's $50 if we had to deliver it to their business.
So there's a minimum we're allowed or a maximum we're allowed, and I think
It's
that's
50.
$7. So the $50 is the
a fine.
fine.
That's the state, that's the
The
state.
$7 is the return. So if they pick it up themselves, we typically wouldn't charge them if they pick it up within the 72 hours. But if we have to return it, well, there's the fine and then the $7
You
for
have to
return.
capture what our guy had to pick it up to bring it here.
Mhm.
I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah, we don't want to be the ones who end up taking all the burden, all the cost of this. If it's going to cost $7, that's not worth our time or our effort for $7. I would really say, here's the deal. It's going to cost you $50 fine. If you don't come and get it, we're going to do like we do with things that we impound for automobiles. It's going to go someplace. They're going to be scrapped, and and the city will recoup its costs by having to take them for abandoned carts into being scrapped.
And we could do this 6 months, like you said, where we don't really enforce it, but we go through the process.
Pilot.
Then depending on how they react to it, then we make the rules based on how they've been doing it.
I'm just reading the ORS here for a local government. It's page 50 of the packet. A local government that identifies, salvages, or reclaims an abandoned shopping cart shall use a toll-free telephone line described in subsection 1C of the section to report the existence and location of the cart to the owner of the shopping cart if the owner is identifiable. And a local government may take custody of an abandoned shopping cart and impose a fine of $50 on the owner if the owner does not retrieve the shopping cart within 72 hours after the local government makes a report under subsection. So my understanding of the ORS, as I'm reading it here, is not that the general public is issuing this toll-free number to call in stolen shopping carts. This is the city, the enforcing agency, lack of a better term, making the call to whoever they deem as the toll-free number to report this issue.
It's both.
It's both. Okay.
So it would be, the number is what they want them to put on the cart and on the sign, so the public can call that number. And it would also, they're prescribing that it'd also be the number that the city could call to tell them to come. I don't know why I wouldn't call the business directly, but they're saying that in the ORS, we can call that number and report it as well, that there's an abandoned cart, or we have their cart in our possession.
The other challenge is if
I was
we
looking at-
hold their carts, it says we have to hold it for 30 days
Right.
before we can scrap it. That's a long time to hold. I could see
Yeah,
carts
you could-
accumulating. We don't have space.
I
for
talked to the
30
Public
days.
Works Director, and he wants us to put all the carts over.
It's like the old bicycle.
He does not want us to do that. Just want to be clear.
Was a garbage yard or something like that, you know?
So does 72 hours begin when we call the company? Hey, your
Yes.
cart's-
Yeah. If there was this toll-free number set up, as soon as we do the notification to that number, and they're supposed to be checking it, then yes, that would when the time
What's
starts.
the toll-free number cost? I know there's a cost to those. Is
I
it by
do not-
usage?
It's usually by the month. Sometimes it can be by the call. It's been a while since I've looked that up, but usually there's just like any other phone number, because it's a 1-800 or 188 or whatever, there is a certain cost to have that type of number.
So I would like to know, I think when we come back, when this comes back, assuming that it's coming back and not past tonight, I think we should know what the costs, the programmatic costs are. And then we can fold those into the recovery fee, so to speak, that's not the ORS capped 50, to determine, to make sure that the city is not completely, this is basically an issue related to public safety, drainage, all that kind of stuff. So that cost isn't borne by the city to to deal with this thing, so to speak. So
Right.
if that can be borne into, we take what the amount of carts we pull, how much that kind of cost, we can factor that into if they don't pick it up and we got to store it, there's a fee to that, and that becomes the, that plus whatever. And then I would suggest that that money be dedicated in terms of to the code enforcement officer's line item, and not sent into some general open pot. I know that sometimes budgeting doesn't like that way, but I think that just like we do with marina revenues from leases and all that go into the marinas, I think that money should go to ensuring that a code enforcement officer is being paid, because that took us a long time to get a code enforcement officer. So
I think the 1-800 number at a minimum, depending on the type, there's landline and there's VoIP and there's also through the internet itself. It ranges from $20 on up a month.
okay.
So it could be $240 a year at a minimum.
Well, with how many carts we're pulling. So I think I do agree with Commissioner Mitchell, though, there is a certain amount of cost of doing business, and that is their product, that is their issue, so to speak. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a requirement to even put this forward. So yeah, I think that there's some questions, though, with legal related to
What we can and put in there or not.
yeah, and I think that I think we need to look at in that alternative compliance. Does that alternative compliance based, does that require us to then make them label all their carts regardless? Everybody's gonna label their carts, or is it just, the ones that are not under alternative compliance? Then if they fall out of that range, then that triggers their requirements. And I think the city should probably be the central number. Commissioner Poe?
Yeah, I would hate to get our small market that's not having any problem at all and not losing any of their carts caught up in a lot of cost, 1-800 numbers, labeling, just a lot of stuff, because they already seem to, they were doing bottle return, and now they're not doing the bottle return anymore, because it seemed like you had to have almost a full-time person doing the bottle return.
Well, he's still doing it. He's just doing it differently.
Differently, yeah, but he isn't having to do as much counting because of the machine out front and stuff, but I know.
A lot of our small markets and such have a very thin overhead.
I think we should be sensitive to our small people that are in compliance, that aren't causing a problem otherwise. we're kind of causing them more grief.
Yeah. So I think, as much as I would love to, as much as I would like to move this forward and do a pilot, I do think that we should at least get some legal opinions on the alternative compliance measures, explore that cost and get a better cost structure for that. Of course, this allows the city manager to set the fee, so that's fine with me too. But I do think that that's probably worth exploring before we go forward for passage, especially if we're going to have to redo the first reading anyway, if we do add that section to it as well.
And I believe Chief heard from at least one of you, but just to get the pulse of all of you, the additional $7 for returns or whatever, I mean, there's kind of a minimum we can do toward that. Do you want that in there? Or-
My understanding is the ORS doesn't mandate a number for cart return. So in my mind, it's just what, I mean, we need to factor in the cost of running the program, so to speak. Hopefully, things get so great, we can disband the program. That would be the ideal outcome, but it's getting worse. So
I would like to see what specialized general services cost or what, contact them again and say, so
What are you charging?
what are you
for
charging to
returns?
do this?
but keep in mind that specialized services, as you remarked, is only doing it once a week. That's not 72 hours.
No, so if we did pass something with the 72 hours, they're gonna have to change their twice a week then.
Right, because I mean, if it sits on the,
They're gonna put their, whoever they're contracting with out of compliance, and that's not good.
so, but I think Commissioner Mitchell's point's well taken. So I guess, as we move it forward, we'll run on the line again, just so that there's clarity over what we want to see in this, so that staff knows what they want to put into it. And also if we want to move forward first reading or not. So Commissioner Mitchell, you still with first reading now?
Yes.
And any changes for alternative compliance, or you feel like no?
Yeah,
You're fine with alternative
Yes.
compliance? Okay.
I'm with, get the information back and then come back and.
Clean
vote on it.
ordinance.
And I'd like to have that 6-month thing when we do it.
Okay. Commissioner Celestia?
Alternative, alternative compliance options, please.
So if it's okay, is there a motion to table the ordinance number 1295 until such time as amendments can be written, legal vetted, and set a no later date than basically 2 meetings from now, hopefully in the next meeting?
We'll try and get it back the next meeting, but it just depends on legal.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Poe Dyer to table ordinance number 1295 and for staff to consult with legal related to alternative compliance and the full programmatic costs, or at least estimated. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the Hammond Transmission Waterline Contract Award, the fabled Hammond Waterline.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Hope you enjoyed my opening act tonight. Proud to.
It's the greatest show on earth, man.
I'm happy to present that we've made some really good progress on the Hammond Transmission Water Line, ready to move into the next stage of construction. And for just a recap on the project, it's 4,500 feet of 18-inch water line that's being installed from Northwest 13th Street to Lake Drive. This will be the first phase of the project. We're asking to award the contract to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder, North Cascade Excavating. And
Should we note also the most compliant as well?
I will note, since this fell under my jurisdiction, that there was a lower bid, but it was not fully responsive. They did appeal, and that appeal was denied by me upon further review. I also reviewed it with our engineering who are overseeing the project, and I also reviewed it with legal. And we did determine it non-responsive, so we went to the next bidder.
Non-responsive because it didn't comply with.
It did not have the full packet that was needed.
Yep.
And that's particular to our grant itself,
Yep.
as well as the project.
All right, remind me too, just from this first phase gets us how far?
this gets us from Northwest 13th Street, so the roundabout there where the 18-inch transmission line dead ends in front of the Nygaard property, or Tansy Point, I believe it's called. And then it'll go up the
Corner of 7th and Pacific, Northwest Warrenton Drive?
Northwest Warrenton Drive. It'll go heading north and it'll dead end at Lake Drive.
Well, Lake Drive would be the end terminus of the project.
That's phase 1 and 2.
Yeah, he's including
Must
the
be
entire
one and
thing.
two.
Yeah.
All right,
Um,
this contract's only getting us so far though.
So this is, did you say it was 4,500 feet?
Yes,
2500.
that's what I said.
So the first phase is 4,500 feet.
That's the one that takes us to Triangle Park, basically, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
I'm not good on how many feet away Triangle Park is.
that's all right. Yeah. I'm just trying to recall
Yeah, it will
the
not get us
6,000
all the way to
different
Lake Drive.
presentations on
unfortunately.
this and where we're at.
If you recall the 1.5 million project that turned into 6 million, that's what it's gonna take it to get us there, but we will get there eventually.
All right. Any questions of staff?
I just have a question
Sure.
just on the dollar amount and the recommended. So it says it's 2.29371.8.03 is the amount of the award plus 10%, not to exceed percent of the contract amount for incidentals or anything that you may come up.
Contingency, yes.
Continue
Yeah.
to come up. Okay. But then it says, under the physical impact, it says that funding this project is included in the current fiscal year budget of $3 million allocated. The following, the budget is funded through a combination of sources: 1.6 million from business, from the safe water drinking loan, $1 million from the environmental protection, EPA, and the remaining. But it says the cost is 2.2 plus 10%. That's only 2.4, 2.5. So,
So
and they're
there-
giving us, we're getting 2.6. I don't understand why we're,
So there was engineering design already done. I think that's the gap. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. So
Yeah, that would be their cost.
they're talking about the round numbers of the full project, but this actual bit.
how much engineering costs were there before this?
You know, I wasn't here when we went out to bid for that, so I'm not.
So we had
certain.
Consor engineer this and, oh, you're testing my memory.
Yeah,
Commissioner.
typically it's around.
It was a significant amount of money and it was for the full entire.
Okay, so just so I understand, just
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
just so it was, you're suggesting, you're saying that it's going to cost $3 million, roughly 1.6 out of a 2.2, maybe 2.4, with contingencies, plus whatever we've already spent in engineer, our finance officer saying yes. So anything we might spend that was already allocated or already been done might take up that other $400,000 costs or somewhere near that number to reach that $3 million that was allocated.
Yeah, as I viewed it, we financed basically 1.65 through the SDWRL.
Right.
We got a grant for $1 million from
For $1
EPA,
million.
and then the rest we're pulling out of the cap reserve fund.
Yes.
And of the project, that's for phase one, and of that project, this is the actual construction of the water line.
Yeah.
Of
So
that entire project. So it probably is just unclear related to,
some of that's
and-
the 10%. Yeah.
well, 10% only got.
No, it can't be the 10%. I mean,
That's made it
it has,
2.5.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's, you can even, I'm just bumping it up 10%. So I just want to make sure that the other monies to make up that $3 million that we've allocated, because you're saying we're making up the balance. The remaining is coming out of our capital reserve fund, capital water reserve fund,
Yes.
had to be the engineering, the finance
Yes.
officer. I'm looking
Yes.
at.
Some of the.
Coming directly, has already been allocated and paid for as part of that $3 million.
Well, so it's for this current fiscal year. Yes. Yes. You're saying it a little differently than I would, but you're correct.
Well, the fiscal year doesn't start until the first, but
We're appropriating this money from this fiscal year.
So we have already spent some of this for design. And then some of it is, and engineering. And now this is the remainder. And it is a total of 3 million. And of
okay,
that
but
3
you're looking,
million,
it's a total of $3 million regardless of which calendar year it falls into, or fiscal year it falls into. The job was $3 million. Part of it started in the 2024, 25, the 25 fiscal year. And which was whatever the money was in the bounce, just, it's like.
I think what's tripping me up is this memo is saying this fiscal year only, and I think that's incorrect. But I will double check that and clarify that for you.
I don't have much.
So the engineering will be paid in the,
We've already paid.
We've
for
already
that.
done the engineering.
Yeah, that
That's why
contract
I'm
was like
asking
6
if-
months ago.
Yeah, that was already done in this fiscal year. So the engineering was done for the whole
Whole thing.
pipeline. We asked them to do the entirety and we asked them to make sure that when phase one was completed, that it would be able to complete to phase two or connect to phase two, that it wasn't like we create a pipeline and then we abandon it and then we have to come back and re-engineer to
Okay.
connect to the next phase. Yeah.
All right. Any other question? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Well, no.
Okay.
Is there a motion to award the construction contract for phase one of the Hammond Transmission Waterline Project to North Cascade Excavating in the amount of $2,293,718.03 and authorize a contingency not to exceed 10%?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Salacio Dyer to award the construction contract for phase one of the Hammond Transmission Waterline Project to North Cascade Excavating in the amount of $2,293,718.03 and authorize a contingency not to exceed 10%. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion
And
carries.
I apologize, Commissioner Mitchell. I will have that back breakdown more clear for you.
Okay.
This project has carried on over so many years. I've quite frankly got lost in the pieces, so I will make sure that's clarified.
Yeah, no, yeah. Commissioner Dyer was just noting that this project was started when we first got on the commission in 2013, so.
Yeah.
All right, next we have grants. Commissioner Salacio.
Yeah, so I'm bringing to the commission's consideration for the city to provide a letter of support for the county's application to the Columbia Pacific CCO for a grant program in order to pilot a program called Lease to Locals. So as everyone knows, we are in a housing crisis, and Commissioner Mitchell can probably speak to this better than I can because he was in more of the meetings. But the Lease to Locals program allows people with short-term rentals or seasonal vacation homes to engage with the Lease to Locals program and list their home for mid to long-term rentals for people that actually live here, and they provide a financial incentive to do so. The county, before implementing this at a countywide level, they would like to implement a pilot to see what the impact would actually be, and they're asking every single jurisdiction to provide a letter of support. We are the final jurisdiction that has not provided a letter, so Seaside, Gerhardt, Astoria, the county have all provided letters of support, and by demonstrating support, we would also be eligible. And at earliest estimates, there's about 200 units within Warrenton that would be eligible to participate. So I wanted to bring that to the commission to discuss, and happy to answer any questions as I'm able.
I will tell you, Commissioner Slosky and I had a conversation about this, and I had actually mentioned this, I think a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so back with the county. Cannon Beach was the first to bring this forward. And the program was brought forward before the Housing Task Force, Northwest Housing Task Force, as a way of finding residents for those live local who are, especially in places like Cannon Beach. It's administered by a company from New England. They primarily have been doing homes in places like Cape Cod and the Hamptons, where people who live there and service the community can't afford to live in their own community because of the cost of what they can make in short-term housing. The problem is, of course, is it the cost to the cities. Now, this is a pilot program, but the actual cost to the cities is $18,000 a year if we were not in the pilot program. Would be $18,000 a year to subsidize a homeowner that will then put in, so they're not losing quite as much money in short-term housing as they would lose if they actually had. Now in Warrenton, in our case, we have a very small handful of short-term housing, but I think it's interesting that the program has now gone to the pilot stage, because it shows that there's definitely, at least especially in South County, a bigger need for this. I think there's a big need for it here. We just don't have as many short-term housing. I don't think we can afford the $18,000 that it would cost to do it either. But if we can do a letter support and find that it's a program that we can benefit from, that is not going to cost us anything, and is going to be funded by the county or the state, or however they wish to fund it, or if they're just looking for a letter of support to saying that we're going to do this pilot program throughout the county for those, especially again in South County, who have this issue, I say that we support the pilot program.
I was on the original technical advisory committee for the county housing plan, and my big shtick was either we got to figure out a way to get the legislature to allow for second homes to have a separate tax, or whatever to move housing to available for people who actually want to live and stay and work here. So this is a step in the right direction. I will agree with you, though. I don't think I personally wouldn't like to subsidize people for making that choice, so to speak. I don't think that's the way to go about that. But if other communities want to do that, because I know short-term rentals is a very different story culturally and just, monetarily in Seaside and Cannon Beach and other locations. If they want to do that, that's their business, not mine. I don't think the city of Warrenton wants to be involved in subsidizing people for how many vacation rentals we have, like 8, in the we have less. 21, but we have in the non-conforming ones, we only have like,
I think it's a couple.
it's like 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, we've really reduced that. So, I mean, commercial zones allow it. It's commercial use, that's fine. But in the non-conforming residential areas, that's a few. But I think this takes some of the pressure off us if other jurisdictions want to get involved and subsidize that. So I think there's no skin off our back to support the program. So.
Yeah, I see it as like a data gathering opportunity for us to get a better understanding of like what the implications might be, what strategies might work here locally. And like you said, there's no skin off our back. It's just a letter that we would support this and it would open up residences in Warrenton to this opportunity.
All right. Well, is there any opposition to the letter of support? Is there a motion to approve a letter of support to the program?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Mitchell Dyer to approve a letter of support. Authorize the mayor's signature on supporting the grant for Clatsop County for vacation rental and rental housing, correct?
The Lisa Locals Pilot Program.
The Lisa
Yeah.
Locals Pilot Program, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Now we have resolution number 2707, a budget adjustment for sanitation.
All right, so thank you for letting us add this resolution last minute to the agenda. I apologize for not getting it submitted earlier. This resolution is to transfer appropriations from contingency to materials and services in the sanitation fund, so we don't overspend our appropriated budgeted amount. I think when I was looking back in past years, we have budgeted much more than we've used, and a couple public works directors ago, they tried to reduce it to what they thought actually might be spent, and I think we cut it back a little too far. We did kind of see that when we were looking at budget for fiscal year 2026, and we have bumped those lines up for next fiscal year. I'm hoping we bumped it up enough, but we will continue to monitor that in the next fiscal year as well. It has to do with tipping fees, the costs to maintain our landfills that were closed, and then repair and maintenance of aging vehicles.
My understanding is that the cost to monitor, that we have a contract to the monitoring of our former dumps that are in our city that we're responsible for or whatever.
Yeah.
That contractor has ceased or no longer working for us, and therefore the new one is a lot more expensive, which has also contributed to the cost increase.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I remember right too, some of these numbers were set before our new public works director was set,
Correct.
so.
He's here for support. But he did not put forward the numbers that are in the budget that we're working.
We'll make sure
with
that
right now.
reflects poor guidance.
Yes.
So, all
If you
right.
have any technical questions, we'll try to get through them.
Is there any questions of staff related to the budget adjustment? If not, is there a motion to approve resolution for 2707?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Dyer Poe to approve resolution number 2707. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion carries. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
No discussion items, so we'll move on to go to the order. Commissioner Poe,
Nothing for me tonight.
Salacio,
Nothing.
Dyer,
Nothing.
Mitchell, city manager, the recorder. Well, I actually do have 2 things for the good. One is that I was just to kind of give the public a little insight into the transportation bill. The Oregon Mayor's Association didn't take a position on it because the communities of Oregon are actually deeply divided on the transportation bill and its provisions. I was surprised because LOC really wanted OMA to take a position on it. The Oregon Mayor's Association being OMA. And then also the board's community engagement volunteer task force did have its first meeting, met with several chairs. I forgot to mention this in commissioner reports. And it went really well. I think some of the results we got from that were actually surprising. But good conversations, and we'll continue to work on that. And there's 2 task forces currently in motion. One is a development review task force that is reviewing all of the development permits for the last 2 years and doing interviews with developers to see what pain points there are in the city's processes for pulling a permit, whether it be a floodplain permit or a major development. And that's headed by Commissioner Mitchell and Commissioner Poe. And then the volunteer boards and engagement, which we're talking to all of our volunteer board members, as well as our exterior nonprofits that support the city. And that's headed up by Commissioner Slacio and myself. So the city is working on its goals to be better at community engagement, communication, and understanding needs and situations within our city. And I'm looking forward to seeing the reports for those. And that's all I have for the good of the order. So we do have an executive session. So with that, under the authority of ORS 19, the commission will now meet in executive session under the authority of ORS 192-6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session is previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. The commission is not expected to return to regular session to take action on any item considered in the executive session.